Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another live session with Emirates MBD. We hope you're all staying safe and healthy, and most importantly, socially responsible. So, as we navigate through these times and adapt to this new change, we're bringing you a series of live sessions that will help you create your brand and find opportunities to build your career and get the job you always wanted. So 2 weeks ago, we hosted our first session on career management that's led by Shane Phillips, who's the CEO of the management consultancy, the Phillips Group. Shane is also the author of the book Find Your Dream Job and has previously hosted a TV show and live radio show called Eye on Careers on Dubai Eye 103.8. So the first episode was all about finding your vision and how important it is to set your vision when building your brand and the job you want. So if you didn't get the chance to watch that, you can always find the first episode on our IGTV. So today, Shane joins me again for the second episode, where we talk about energy and motivation. So Shane, thank you so much for your time, and it's always good to have you back for another episode.
Thanks for having me. Really excited to be here, and a big thank you as well to Emirates MBD to taking charge in a crisis like this and helping people with their careers. It's really hats off to a great brand.
So thank you as well. So let's start off with the first question of the day, which is, so we all know that we're coping with this new normal as a consequence to the COVID-19 crisis. All of these jobs being deflated and lost can be overwhelming. So from your experience, what do you recommend one can do to stay motivated and energized?
I think the first thing that we need to do is realize that we're in a marathon and that the COVID-19 situation could easily extend itself into Q1 or Q2 of 2021. So with that, I think when you're under stress and you're trying to look for a new job, you could be running around, drinking lots of coffee, maybe not getting enough sleep, eating fast foods, or ordering food in on the Talabat or whatever else people are clicking on. And a lot of that actually has a very negative effect on our nutrition and our microvitamins or micronutrients. And that in effect actually can create a depression and a depressed mood. So one of the things you can do is make sure that your vitamins C, vitamin D, and vitamin B, particularly vitamin B6 and B12 are high. And just the vitamins and diet alone, sometimes that's enough to boost. And I think they're actually even doing this in Los Angeles, for example, where you can go to the doctor and you can get a vitamin boost. And if anyone's ever had that shot of vitamin D or had one of those vitamin boosts from the doctor, you immediately have an increase in energy and an increase in mood. I think that's one. And the second piece is really having a strategy of what we're doing and what's our long-term goal. And where are we going, over the long period? That I can talk more about that if you want, or if you had another question, I don't know. But the long-term goal, you'll have to cut me off because I have a tendency just to talk. Like I can easily talk for an hour without stopping. So please feel free.
No worries what the session is about, so you can go ahead.
Yeah, so I think the next most important piece is really having that long-term goal of like, what do you want to do with your life? And, I think if you are running a sprint, for example, and your shoelace is untied and you fall over, you won't finish the race. You'll stop because it's a sprint. But if I'm in a marathon and it's 42 kilometers and I fall over, I'll stop, I'll change my shoes, I'll change my socks. I'll keep going because it's a 4 hour, 5 hour, 6 hour, however long it is. And I think that's what you need to have with your career is you have to say, hey, I'm in this for the next 20 years. And if all of a sudden I'm in the event industry and events are having a tough time, I'm not going to totally jump and switch industries and throw my career away. I'm going to settle in and know that I'm in for the long run. Mm-hmm. So that's one real important piece is really getting that larger vision, which I think we set in the last time. And then if you look on the micro level, which is like, how do I deal with my day-to-day? Because sometimes you can wake up and it can be daunting. You can be overwhelmed. There's too many things to do. You don't know what thing to do first. You might be full of fear. You could be full of anxiety. You might be full of anger. You could be full of a lot of negative things. So one of the things that we really prescribe is a time budget. And when you deal with people who are at the lower income brackets, you will find that they have a financial budget. And when you deal with people who are in higher income brackets, so if you deal with people who are in the top 1% of earners, they won't have necessarily a financial budget. In fact, some of my candidates who are really in the top 1%, they don't know exactly what their salary is. That's where I've had that happen. But they have what's called a time budget. They're very, very prudent on how and where they spend their time. So if you look at actually slide 6, let me show you slide 6 here, which is something that most people won't have, which is what's called a time budget. And then we break down your core tasks for the job search into, what do we have here? I think it's like 7 or 8 core activities. And what happens is that when people move into their job search, and I'm dealing with someone who can't find a job, they're generally in these bottom 2 brackets where they've been applying to online jobs and they've been dealing with headhunters, and they're spending anywhere from 80 to 100% of their time applying in terms of how they're spending their job search time on online jobs and headhunters. And these are your least effective ways of actually finding a job. So if you're watching this hopefully this slide will be, hopefully a powerful pivot point for you in your career management strategy, in your job search strategy, in that we want to spend our time in the most effective way. And this is kind of like business 101. So, a CEO will look at, okay, who's our most profitable customer? What's our most profitable product or service? And let's push our resources on pushing those. And you want to do the same thing. So you really want to look at, what is the most effective way to get a job? And let me focus my time there. And if you go and you just talk to your friends, for example, 60 to 80% of your friends and family will have gotten their job through somebody who they know. They would have been referred into the job. Somebody would have told you. So that right away tells you that the online job and the headhunters, actually only 5 to 15% of people would have gotten their job purely from talking to a headhunter or purely from just applying to an online job. So in the time budget, we want to reduce your and not remove. So you have to realize what I'm saying here. I'm not taking it off the table. I'm saying reduce the amount of time you spend on it. And then I want you to increase your time in other areas. So one area where people really don't spend that much time is on the industry research. So really understanding, first of all, if you go back to our last session, which was on vision and direction, which is really setting that vision in one industry and really being focused. So for example, say now, I want to be in sports apparel. Really, I want to understand what's happening with sports apparel. How is, Nike, Adidas, Puma, Fila, Under Armour, and all these brands performing in the US, in Europe, in China? How are they going to be performing in the Middle East? And really start to look at what subsegments or segments will be performing better than others. If you look at banking, for example, you have Islamic banking, which will be performing differently than conventional banking. You have digital banking, which will also perform different than brick and mortar banking. And then you have the fintech card that's also performing in a much different way. So understand what's the industry doing, and then start to make predictions about how those industry trends will translate into your region, whether you're in the UK or you're in Dubai or you're in Saudi or you're in Oman or wherever you are, and picking up where you are. So then the next piece is the company research. And this is really getting into who is when you do your company research, you want to start with, who's the board, how is the company performing? What does that P&L actually look like? Are they losing money? Are they making money? You could have a good top line growth, but your bottom line is not there. So, there's some very big multinationals who come in, they take a big office, they have expensive consultants, and, from the outside, things look great, but internally, they're in big trouble. So you join them and, you could be first person in, first person out. And then if you look at this, you have 13% of your time on networking, calls, and meetings. So if you add that together, that's about 57% of your time generating meetings, generating calls, interacting with the outside world, which is dramatically different than somebody who's applying to an online job. You're not actually meeting anyone. So here we're saying, look, 57% of your time should be reaching out. Hi, Mrs. Tala, I saw we're both interested in digital media. I'd love to come by and have a coffee with you. Are you free at 12? Or hey, hey, I know it's COVID-19. Maybe we could just have a quick Teams meeting or a quick Zoom meeting, and start to make those connections. That's very critical. And then if you look at, and this is something that's new also on here, when you look at the content creation and the marketing, people are like, what are you talking about marketing? So in the digital age, which is, I mean, I don't know in 20 years if they're going to consider us digital, or they'll look back and they'll say, oh, these guys thought they were digital. Look at them now. But I mean, as far as we can tell from what we've experienced, it's the most digital moment in our history. And you have to start looking at how are you branding yourself online. And so if you just take something simple like your LinkedIn profile, there is a rectangular piece behind your picture which is totally customizable, where you could use a graphic designer and you could write your value proposition, whatever it is, whatever you want to write there, but nobody really does. So you're not using the full toolkit that you have to brand yourself or to create content. So what do I mean by creating content? You could go as far as, creating a YouTube channel and creating video content, or it could be something as small as creating a series of posts on LinkedIn groups, on different boards, on different online platforms, or you could create your own LinkedIn group, or you could create, so it's like, are you creating content? That is really, really critical part of managing your career properly in the 21st century. So I don't know if that was too long of a span again. It's like there's a lot of depth here in what we do. So when you sit down and you say, look, we're going to set your career strategy together. There's a lot of elements that go into this to make it work, to make it effective. And these are a lot of things that people in the top 1% are doing intuitively. And people who've really never haven't really had to manage their career because we haven't had a crisis like this before. They've never done it. They're like, well, I barely update my LinkedIn once every 2 years. So, why would I go and make a graphic for the back? But this also really keeps you motivated because when you wake up in the morning, you schedule this stuff into your calendar and you spend 15 minutes a day. So if I could show you slide 9, on slide 9, you just go into Outlook and it's just like as if you have a job. And you say, okay, on Monday, I'm an early riser, so I really think people should jump out of the gates early. Some people I know in the region they don't like they're more night people, but that's fine. You work on your schedule, but at least put in an 8 or 10-hour day. Don't work less than 8 hours on your piece. So you wake up and now I'm removing thought from so as you're asking me, Shane, how do I stay motivated? How do I stay energized? How do I stay positive? So what am I doing with this is I'm taking your mind. You don't want to wake up and be like, oh, I sent Mrs. Tala an email and she didn't respond to me. She probably doesn't like my CV or she doesn't. No, I wake up, I say, oh, what am I doing? I have to do my research trend research. So I'm researching my industry. Boom. And then I do that for an hour and a half. Then I have these calls. I put it in my calendar. I'm calling these 10 people. 8:30 is a decent time to start calling people. And it's important not to start calling at 9 because, at 9 people are in meetings, especially if it's a Sunday morning. People are in a meeting. Don't call them at 9. You got to call them at 8:45, 8:50, 8:55, or you call them at 9:45, 9:50, 9:55 when they're ending their meetings. So, and then I put in here a light lunch, which again, going back to the diet, try not to eat animal protein at lunchtime, not heavy cheeses. Somebody has a veggie sandwich, but it's tons of cheese and everything that's going to slow you down. So try to eat, a veggie lunch and then get into your face-to-face meeting. So, hey, I'll come by and meet you at 12:30. I'll meet you at 1. I'll meet you in the afternoon. And then you boom. And so this is how you put that into practice and you schedule out your time. And so you're not thinking, you don't have time to project into the future, oh, these negative things are going to happen to me. No, you just, boom, you knock it out of the park and you're really focused on action. And the core thing is that it's one, have a plan of where you're going, two, have a schedule of what you're doing, and three, and really always be in action mode, never be in thought mode. That's really critical during your job search, is that it's success is a program of action, not a program of thought.
So two basic elements in order to stay motivated and stay energized is going back to the time budget, which we spoke about earlier, and then basically planning out your day and having it action oriented, as opposed to having it just very passive and throwing, for example, just mentioning your CV, giving it out to the market and not expecting anything in return. It's always having actions, having step-by-step process.
Right. And the time budget is actually, it seems like a very simple concept, but it's a real game changer when you adopt it. So let's take something very simple. Obviously, everybody can see I'm a bit of a foodie. I have to lose a little bit of weight here. So, when you talk to other people, they're like, oh, I work out 3 times a week or whatever. But when you go to a guy who has a 6-pack abs and you start asking him, how much time do you spend in the gym? And, he'll be in the gym 6 days a week. And then you probably play sports 2 or 3 times a week. So that's another, he spends another, 4 to 6 hours on recreation. These guys, they do the wave boarding and all this, they're really active, and then you add it up and they're spending between 12 to 15 hours exercising. Now, if you're a desk jockey like me and you go and you do 3 hours in the gym 3 times a week, I'm not even getting, 20% of the actual time investment that I need to get my result. So when you start to look at this and you apply the time budget, you realize that I'm wasting my time because in 3 months, I'm not going to get the result. I need to start exercising at least 8 or 10 hours a week if I want to see a dramatic result in my weight. And so the time budget, for example, can work when you have a book. You take a book and you realize that, hey, I read a book, I read a page about 2 minutes a page. So that means that it takes me 8 hours to read an entire book. So when you take a book, you have a book, then you say, well, if I read for 30 minutes every morning, in a month, I'll read 2 books a month. I'll be able to read 24 books a year. I'll become the best read person in my industry within 12 months. And now that gives you resilience because you wake up, you're like, oh, I don't really want to read this. But when I look at the big picture, it drives me forward. So what you want to do is really set your goals. Right. And this is the other piece to your resilience. Is a lot of people don't set goals, and I was talking about earlier, I think before we started, is that a lot of people don't set your goals. So if you set your personal, professional, and breakthrough goals for the year, and then you set a time budget against each one of those, and you start to see what realistically you can achieve and what realistically you do or do not have time for. So sorry.
Go ahead. I have another question, so I'm going to steer the conversation in another direction.
Sure, go ahead. I mean, I'm open for any question, please.
So you mentioned earlier that if you want to, for example, set your life and build your career, you don't have to take vacations, or you have to stay motivated the whole time. So we have an interesting question that says, many people take 3 to 4 weeks once they change jobs or they want to move careers or things like that. So what's your opinion on that? Because we touched upon that before we started our session. Just want to go back to that point as well.
So what, should people take a vacation when they lose their job?
Yes.
So I think, you should take a vacation, when, if it was like a farm, for example, and you've now done your harvest and the barn is full of corn and you have your weed, and everything's in order and you're safe, go on vacation. But when you're under duress, it's like, it's Pearl Harbor, the bombs are dropping and the ships are sinking. And then people are like, oh, I'm going to go on vacation. It's not the time when you're under attack. Your career has been threatened. Your career is under duress. The markets are under duress. It's not the time to take the vacation.
Mm-hmm.
It's a time to get things in order and fix your career because it's in a bad state. And what will happen is when you take your vacation, it's much harder to get back into the role of things. Even when you have a job, you go on vacation, you come back. The first week you're still in vacation mode, right? You're not full power. So that's just what I'm against. What I would say is that, you immediately, again, success is a program of action. Take that action, jump into action right away and start doing your research, setting up your calls, getting things moving. And maybe even before you go on vacation, you spend 2 or 3 weeks really driving that networking and you get the ball rolling. So every day you have your calls. And then if you have to take a break, fine, you have to take it because maybe some people, they're so burnt out and they're so battle fatigued and they're so stressed out that they need that breather. That's a different story than just saying, oh, well, let me just take a break. This is a time, and most people know that it's coming, right? That that you're going to be, whatever the PC term is it for today, that you're going to be encouraged to explore new horizons, let's say. It's usually never a surprise. So, maybe book a week of vacation while you're still on the payroll or whatever you have to, but stay away from this 1 month. The worst thing is people I'm going to go backpacking around the world for a year to find myself. That is not going to help you. When you come back, you will not have any clear idea of what you want to do from a professional perspective unless it's going to be a backpack tour guide. The way you figure out what you want to do is by getting your hands dirty. Get in there, get to the coal front and start hammering away at this.
But if we put it into context, managing your career in times of a crisis, unfortunately like this one, could really be demotivating and discouraging for a lot of candidates. So what advice do you give them to stay motivated during this time, even after they've been let go of their current jobs?
Yeah, so I think this is the best time, actually. The fact that you have a crisis means that you can really meet with the people. Some of the most powerful people in the world are free right now. Because especially so for example, if I was this chairman of the biggest event company in the world, chances are I have a little bit of free time on my hands. If, there's whichever of these industries which were really hit hard from the crisis, you would be able to book meetings. And so what I would say, and just going back to one of the core things that you can do to drive your career, is have a career roadmap. And if I can maybe just show you slide 14 here, which means make a plan for yourself that's 5 or 10 years out. So you say, okay, where do I want to be professionally in 2030? So you say, okay, I want to be a commander of the Space Force ship flying to Mars. Okay, fine. So I better start studying aviation. I better start getting involved in aerospace. I better start getting, I don't know, whatever you would do to do that. And then by 2025, you would have to be in a company that is committed to colonizing Mars or working on Mars. So you have Virgin Galactic, you have SpaceX, you have a limit of 5-6 companies. So then you would say, okay, in year 1, I want to start really making my network there. And so here, this was more of just for a management consultant, but you would start to look at, what do you really need to do in the next year? And then you would realize that, okay, if I want to do the SpaceX thing, then I want to start meeting people who work in the Mars, in NASA, in Virgin Galactic, in SpaceX or whatever. If it's being a consultant, then these are the specific people I want to meet. And as you get down to it, there's only 5 or 7 or 8 companies that really fit this career map. So you don't waste time with this big splash. The big problem with people going, as I said, when I'm working with people who can't find a job, they go online, they just start applying to everything. And it just spreads you out. It just flattens you out. And so you don't have the power or strength to really move quickly through an industry. And, when you want to apply force to a market, And what does that mean? Force is speed times mass. So if I want to calculate how much force you're going to hit me with, it's how fast are you running plus what your body mass is, and that will give me an impact status. So when you apply to 50 different jobs, you have no speed. Your mass is completely, basically not really moving. It's just, but when I'm just focused in one area, and as you said, I tried to pick the most craziest thing I could think of, which was, I want to be a commander driving a spaceship to Mars. But you very quickly see, as I become hyper-focused, well, you're like, oh yeah, well, there is SpaceX, well, there is Virgin Galactic, well, there is NASA, well, there is, and now there's a couple other new companies popping up. So all of a sudden I have 6 or 7 companies that I can actually drive this career map forward. Mm-hmm. And that is why you should wake up and you should thank God for this crisis, because it's the best time to build relationships. This is the best time to build your power network. This is the best time to get that in, where these people wouldn't have time. These ladies, these men, these ladies and gentlemen, everybody, they won't have time to talk to you. They have time now. So take this time, make your career map, and then start to understand. Once you have the career map, if you look at slide 15, once I start to say, okay, I want to be a starship commander or whatever it is, these are the capabilities I need to develop. And then you start complementing the people that I need to meet with the skills I need to develop. And as I look over time, it's all about building capabilities. So this is also a good time to get qualified. Should I re-get a qualification? If it's in line with my career map, what kind of research can I do on my own to develop these capabilities? So for example, I had a candidate, he needed P&L, he needed to manage a profit and loss in order to develop himself, but he wasn't getting that opportunity in his job. So, he went to a charity and he said, hey, can I be the treasurer? Can I be the treasurer for my church charity or for whatever charity it is that you need to deal with? And you start to develop that capability and start to look at what are the real things that matter, and start meeting with other CFOs and say, hey, I'm a head of sales. I want to become a GM. As a CFO, what are the kind of financial skills that you need from your general manager? And start looking at that. Or you could take the chartered management accounting course. Have this, so these two things together, and then you plug these into your time budget. And you say, hey, I'm now building these capabilities. I'm going to spend, 10 hours a week building this capability, building that capability. And because I want to become, a management consultant in this particular space, these are the top 6 management consultants that I want to meet. I want to meet the guy from McKinsey, the Boston Consulting Group guy, or lady, whoever it is, male or female, and book those meetings out. And I think the key thing is really understanding that. If I can show you slide 16, which is quite interesting, which is as your career matures, you are going to stop doing and you're going to start influencing more. But what happens is in organizations, we don't really teach people how to become more influential, or, these are all soft skills. So kind of as you move to a board level position, you're in fact not doing anything. You're solely influencing. It's not like you're going to see the chairman of Ford on the factory putting cars together. So how do you create that influence? How do you create ownership? How do you inspire, ignite, and motivate a team? How do you drive a group of people? So these are all skills that your company is never going to teach you. And people who are really going to move up in the ladder are doing 2 things. One, they're working for their company, they're doing their job, but they're also spending time developing themselves, and they're taking ownership of that. So really understanding what is the capability map. So one, I don't know if this is again, a long answer to your question, but the number one is put a roadmap. Who do you want to be in 2030? What is the job that you want in 2030? In order to get that job in 2030, what job do you need to have by 2025? In order to get the job by 2025, what do you need by 2024, 23, 22, 21? So where do we need to achieve? What job do we need to get? Basically. Work backwards. And then complement each one of those with a capability map. What are the capabilities that I actually need to get that job? And you'll often see that you're not, you have to go outside of your organization. You might have to pay from your own pocket, take it on yourself to develop those skills. Now, if you have been let go, this becomes much easier to accomplish when you've taken a step out than when you're working in a job that's making you work 90 hours a week. And, you know, especially with the Middle East, a lot of us have to travel a lot. It's a very challenging environment. So that's what I would say is it's really about understanding, you know, where you're going. How, if you just said, you know, if you're at the bottom of Mount Everest and then we say, oh, we're going to climb to the top of that, you would look up and you can't even see the top because it's so high in the clouds. And you would say, man, you crazy. I'm not climbing that. But if you're like, hey, we're just going to get to base camp and then we're going to chill at base camp for a while. And then from there, we're going to go to the second place, and you break it into these baby steps. And that's what you have to do with your career is set those long-term goals and then break them down into what do I need to do in the next year, 12 months, 9 months, 6 months, 3 months. So you work by the quarters, and then you work monthly, and then you work daily. If you go all the way back to my daily budget, I then calculate at the end of the week, if I was working with you, for example, one-on-one, I would then say, okay, at this week, where did your time go? And if all of a sudden we're like, oh, you spent 70% of your job search time off looking at online jobs, well, now we know that we got a problem. And we're not going to get the result, because what happens for online jobs? You now have 10,000 people applying for jobs. Every online job has like 10,000 applications. So that's not going to work. So we need to shift. So it's about having daily goals, weekly goals, monthly, quarterly, and putting this whole system together.
So what about other techniques that you could do to kind of for people to have it energized for themselves?
Yeah, I really like this one, which is, if you look at slide 13, is just breaking into 3 pieces, which sets my personal goals. So for me, you know, I want to be, you know, a good husband. I want to be a good father. I obviously, as I mentioned, let's see how it goes over the sessions. I want to lose some weight. Actually, there's some goals out there. Okay. So you might want to pay your mortgage off. These are personal things. Put it down and say, hey, when you remember, by writing down your goal, you're 40% more likely to achieve it just by writing it down. And then write your professional goal. What do I really want to what do I want to achieve? I want to build a $10 million. The professional goals are pretty easy to put in place, because this is what we're trained to do. Our personal goals, a lot of people don't set those. These 2 in place. Now the third one is really fun. The third one is called your magnifier goal. Sorry, I don't know why I'm not be able to pronounce that. It's not exciting. I can't even say it. But what happens here is you write something that's not, like, you don't even think that you could do. So you say, for example, I'll have my own TV show, or I'll have my own radio show, or I'll have my own book, or I'll have my own whatever it is. And then what happens is, whatever that item is like, one of my candidates who's working with me, he became a reviewer for a Harvard Business Review magazine. He became one of the review judges, and he put that on his profile. And that was like, you know, a really nice boost for his career and his profile. Or you get to be on a board of one of the big banks, or whatever it is. And the magnifier goal, the core thing you have to remember when you write this is that do not let reality influence the magnifier goal at all. So, you know, paying off a mortgage is more of kind of like a realistic goal, but your magnifier goal should not be based in reality. In fact, it should almost be impossible. It's a phantasmic goal to have, and it can excite you. So, for example, we have a webinar series. So one of our magnifier goals on the webinar series is, let's get the Guinness Book of World Records for the most people ever attending a webinar in the history of the world. And then when you look at it, someone's like, okay, well, let's do that. Then you look at it, you say, oh, well, it's only 13,000, it's 12,400 attendees for the world record of a webinar. So you're like, well, that's not actually that much. Maybe we could do it, right? Maybe you and I can end up doing that. Who knows? And so all of a sudden it becomes realistic. And I think this is a really nice template personal professional magnifier goal. Set that out every year, set it down, and then you review it every 3 months. And I think that's like one thing that I would add on. If you want, I have some more. If you want, unless you have questions about this one.
We spoke about the vision board, vision card, and the gratitude list.
Yes, yeah. The vision board is amazing. So if you go to slide 20, this is the vision card is up. But the vision board is actually a lot of very successful and rich people use this. And what you do is you just get a big Bristol board and put it beside your bed and take pictures of all the stuff you want and put it on there, and then put a date on it too. So you could say, I want this house by 2021, or I want it by 2022, or whatever it is. And this goes back to, what we were talking about, do you actually manifest things, or, how does this actually work? But when you look around the world, you have both science and religion pointing the same thing, where every religion around the world, they pray and they sit down and they focus on the things that they need to do or that they need in their life. And here on science, they've actually also shown that sitting down and writing down what you want and focusing on what you want a couple times a day actually increases the likelihood that you will have it. And so writing out your vision board, I think it's a great addition to, so you would set your personal, professional, and your magnifier goals. Then you would create a vision board, put that up, and then you make a vision card. And I always say, look at the vision card 5 times a day. So, and it just reset your priorities, and it starts programming yourself. You'll be surprised at how uncanny it is that you'll start achieving these things that are, of course, you need to also wake up early, wake up early, like as I said in the time budget, wake up at 5 in the morning and start working, and don't go on vacation, take 4-week vacations, focus and work, but complemented with the vision board. It's like a workout regime. It's like you can't just go in the gym and work out and then go and eat fast food. You're not going to lose weight. It's the whole thing together that you have to do that gets the results. And then the next piece, which is very simple, is a gratitude list. Why is this important? So when you deal with people who are in the very lower income brackets, you'll notice that their emotional state can be influenced very easily. So if they're coming to work and they got cut off, they got rained on, they got, a million bad things happen to them, they'll come in the office, they'll be extremely angry, and you'll be like, what happened? Oh, well, I had the worst time coming in. And then you look at someone who's really in the top 1%. They could have gotten a car accident. They could have, I was dealing with one guy. He was so rich, and we were at a party and someone spilled a drink on him. And we were all like, oh, because he's a VIP. We're all like, oh my God, this is going to be so bad. And the guy's like, oh, I'm sorry. And the VIP guy says, no, it's the best thing that happened. And then the other guy's like, why? And he's like, because now I get to meet you. How you doing? What do you do? And he's immediately thinking about, hey, here's a new relationship I can build. Here, maybe I can do business with this guy. And he doesn't care about the drinks being spilled. He's focused on his business. And so people who are in the top 1% realize that your emotional state dictates your energy level dictates your results. So the first thing that we need to protect is our emotional state. We cannot allow ourselves to get depressed. We cannot allow ourselves to be fearful. We cannot allow ourselves to have anxiety. If we want to be successful, we have to put a positive mental state into our heads. And so the gratitude list, when you wake up, and it's the first thing that you do, just write out, what are all the things I'm grateful for? I have my health, I have my da-da-da-da-da, and put yourself in that mood and make a commitment that you are going to dictate your emotional state for the day, and you're not going to have your emotional state dictated to you. And
so this is very similar to what we spoke about in episode 1, where you advised to keep a paper and a pen at all times, and just to write down things that actually make you happy or energized you in that day, or just to make you feel motivated. And it all starts out with just noting down small notes and just keeping them handy. So this goes hand in hand with what you're saying now.
Yes, yes. So that energy, what you're talking about is the energy log, which really helps us identify what are the tasks or what are the jobs that we should be involved in to maintain us, to help us with that high energy level.
Mhm.
Of course, if you're a top performer, you will protect your mental state and you will be able to keep a positive mental attitude through the most negative situations. But of course, if you're doing something that you love doing, that you're really excited about, then of course it's much easier to stay super motivated. And what happens is as your energy levels are high, your results are phenomenally great. And you can end up producing more productive, you get more promotions, you get more raises, you make more money, and it's like a nice circle. The next one that I'd like to share is what I call the BPO, or if you go to slide 22, if I show you slide 22 here, what happens is we have issues. Like for example, right now, for example, I have a mobile phone that somehow's bill is attached to my name and it's not my phone bill. And it's like, okay, they're going to shut down my, there's all so many negative things that could happen out of that, which I start naturally thinking about and then reacting emotionally to, right? And saying, oh, well, they're going to do this and they're going to do that, versus the BPO is what's the best possible outcome that can happen, and visualize that. So write out each one of the things that are bugging you and what's the best possible outcome. So for example, if you have a client that's not paying an invoice, well, you say, oh, well, I have to sue them and we're going to go to court and we're going to blah, blah, blah. And that's the negative way. The best possible outcome is, no, not only are they going to pay the invoice, they're going to give me a new project. They're going to give us new assignments. We're going to keep doing business with them. In fact, we're going to become best friends. We're going to be doing business for the next 10 years together. And then you start having that attitude with someone. Guess what? They start reacting to that. People start reacting to that, and you start getting a totally different result from people. And the best possible outcome is really something that will turn the corner in a lot of your situations. And, you'll find that a lot of people, once they get into a negative situation, they kind of can make it worse by making the fight worse, by putting more fuel on the fire and then going nuclear, like, oh, well, if you don't pay, blah, 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 and, you have to pay now, or da-da-da, and it just blows up. And you're watching this from the outside and you're like, guys, like I had one consultant, and the CEO wanted coaching, and the CEO was trying to get a deal, and the HR consultant was so sick of people trying to get deals that when the CEO said, oh, can we talk about the price? And then the HR consultant just went ballistic, and he was like, no, there's no pricing, and blah, 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 and send this nasty email and just blew it up. And the CEO is sitting there going like, what's wrong with your friend? And I'm like, he's not using the BPO apparently.
Yeah.
So, he could have got a lot of money out of that CEO if he didn't go nuclear. It's the best possible outcome. And I think if you approach everything in your life like that, you have a much better result. And that's the BPO.
So Shane, what's your final advice to help people stay energized in this crisis in 5 bullet points, if you may?
In 5, well, do you want me to talk about the 3 cycles, or do you want to leave that for another session if we're running out of time?
I think we could leave that for another session because unfortunately we're running out of time, but we will still have 4 other sessions on career development running every week, so stay tuned for that. Let's go back to the final advice for people to take out of this session.
Okay, a couple core bullet points is, number 1, when you're under stress and duress, spend time on the diet and put time in for exercise. And number 2, realize that people who are hugely successful, they all have time budgets. So get a time budget. And number 3 is be long-term and really focus on what are your goals. So set your goals for the next 10 years, 5 years, 2 years, 1 year, and then break those into personal goals, professional goals, and put your magnifier goal in, and then put your time budget on top of those goals and put the capability map in. Really be cognizant of what are the capabilities I need to move myself to the next level. So it's the diet and the exercise, it's the time budget, it's setting the goals, and then creating your capability map. And then in the morning, if you use your vision board, your gratitude list, and you use your best possible outcome for all your scenarios, if you do all of that together, you're going to be an unstoppable lion. You're just going to fly through anything. You're just going to do an amazing job. It's going to be so much energy, and you'll find so much success that you'll actually be surprised. You'll be like, I wrote this down, and then it happened. It will start to make you a bit nervous. Like, how come my life has changed so quickly, so fast?
So quick, those are very quick tips and tricks that we could do. They're not much, actually. They're very small things that we could change in our daily lives, but the impact is rather a huge one.
It's a massive. And, I think just even the next time you're going into a conflict and you're like, oh, I'm going to tell the person, and you're already saying like, oh, Tal's going to say this, then I'm going to say that, and then I'm going to say this, rather like say, what's the best possible outcome? This would be my best possible outcome. And then sometimes I even table that at the beginning of conversation. For me, the best possible outcome of this is that if you're a customer for life with us, that totally changes the dialogue, totally changes the mood. And even it changes how you're going to react to me. Even if you're angry, you're like, oh, he wants to resolve this. So, I'm really passionate about these. I'll just keep talking. I know you're trying to shut the session down, but they really, really work. When you sit there and just say, as I interview so many people, and everyone else, they don't interview people all day, but I can promise you that there's only like 5% of the population that is setting 10-year goals for themselves. So just setting your goals, that one piece will move you into a totally different dynamic. And the time budget almost nobody uses, but it's such a powerful tool. I'll give you an example. Say I'm reading this book, for example. This is a good one. Get your dream job. But if I'm reading this and I'm not done, and I have like 30 pages left, but I know that I'm using the time budget and I read 2 pages a minute. I know that I have an hour, and it's a Friday morning, and I have an hour before my wife gets up. I'm like, oh, I have a free hour. I could finish this book off. So right away, my time budget makes me more productive. It helps me become more successful.
Right. Shane, thank you so much. This was such an interesting topic. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us. We hope that you found it an informative session and a beneficial session. Please stay tuned for next sessions as well, where we're going to be talking about a different topic in career management. Once again, I'd like to thank you, Shane Phillips, for this interesting discussion. He's the career coach and the CEO of the management consultancy, the Phillips Group. So thank you once again, everyone. Thank you, Shane. Stay tuned for our next session on this career management topic. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and have a wonderful day.